Okay, this is Franco Ucci with Thursdays with Franco, where we talk things autonomous and apex, helping organizations do more with data and see how far they can go when we talk innovation. Hey, Darren, how are you?
I'm very good. Good morning, Franco.
Now, Darren, I know you've been, as normal, continuing to stay across anything data, anything analytics and data science, but you've been doing something a little bit different in that domain. Can you share what you've been doing?
Yeah, great. What we've done, and we've shown a couple of demos over the last couple of weeks, some of the new AI services that we're offering in Oracle Cloud. So there's a couple around sort of vision detection, images, language detection. From an analytics perspective, what we've done now to make it really easy for an end user to consume these services is actually integrated those back into Oracle Analytics Cloud. So we can actually use some of that capability to be able to then go and do that image processing and then pass the data back and actually analyze what we're getting out of those images. So it's been great fun to actually have a look and see what we can actually get and analyze some of that info.
Now, I also hear that after the recorded session is finished today, you've got two of your product manager colleagues that will be hanging around for the Q&A section.
That's correct. Yeah. So we actually, it's great to have the support. This is a very new feature. It was released in the July release of our Analytics Cloud. So we have both Lalita. So she's responsible for all things AI and machine learning when it relates to Oracle Analytics. And Aravidan, part of her team. So he focuses really on the integration to these AI services and also some of the plugins. So I did a session a couple of months back where we actually showed the analytics library. To support what we're doing here, we released a new plugin which allows us to be able to take the info that's been reported back and actually tie that back to the image. So his team is part of that, and they'll be available for us to be able to answer any questions that may come up.
Well, thank you, Lalita and Aravindan. Let's kick into the session, Darren. So can you start to take us through what you're going to show us?
Sure. Let me just pop into some slides quickly. Give me a second. Okay. Right, so yeah, we're talking about that Oracle Cloud Infrastructure Vision integration with Oracle Analytics Cloud that just been released with the July version. Really wanted to highlight here, there's two main components to the Vision AI service. One is around image analysis. You can see on the left-hand side, so things like image classification, object detection, and also being able to recognize any text that might be occurring. So, the example we've got there is the motor vehicle. So, it'll actually come back and be able to read things like the number plate and be able to then utilize that information as we go through. On the right-hand side is more traditional, what we think of as OCR, optical character recognition. So, this has been around for a fairly long time. But what we do here is the ability to be able to read documents and actually make some sort of sense of those. So this is around a little bit more text recognition, even though we do have that on the left-hand side, but around document classification. So it'll be able to do things like, I've actually found a document, I think it's an invoice, or it's a label on a medicine bottle, and it'll actually be able to then tie those back. So if you've got things like an invoice, it'll go through and actually show you and say, I found the merchant name, I know the address, I found, the different line items, here's the total, and be able to then, do that extraction for us. Come back to the left-hand side. One of the questions that I often get asked is, what's the difference between sort of image classification and object detection? So image classification really is, I've got a picture, does it contain a tree? Does it contain a power line? And I'll show you an example of those. Whereas the object detection is, I may have a picture with multiple different vehicles in it, and I'll be able to highlight and say, I've got a car, a bus, I've actually got 3 cars. And actually, you can see that the little boxes are occurring around the image here from a BMW perspective. So those little gray areas, it's found where the wheel is, it's found where the number plate is. It's, the whole overall image is actually classified as a car. So we're actually going through and actually allowing to be able to then do that and tying them back, which allows us to.
So that's, yep. So that's quite impressive. So first off, if we're thinking about what we want to do with images, you've broken this down such that you may be doing something with documents or stuff around reading text, and you're trying to extract data from that. And that's the document AI. And then there's the other side around image analysis. And once again, you go, I've got these images. What do I do with these images? And you've got classification where, like you said, this is a tree or a plant or a glass or a plate or a car or a bus. So you're actually classifying things. And just that in itself may communicate, hey, I need to do something about this image because it's got these cars or these things. But then once it actually, you've got that next layer down, which is I can actually detect the object and what the object is. And then if you need to, you can also strip text out of there and once again do something clever with what that means. So, this is really breaking down that whole what Oracle can do with data. And there's a lot we can do just with a simple image.
Absolutely. So yeah, and again, to highlight there, so the July release of Analytics Cloud that has just been released, had just come out, that caters for everything on the left-hand side. The document OCR type content, we're still working on a little bit more and hoping to get that out the door sort of early next year.
That's great.
All right. So when we look at the AI Vision service, it comes with two main components. So there's a whole bunch of pre-trained models. So what these recognize are generic world items that we may think of. You can see examples there: a car, a bicycle, a dog, a traffic light, a hamburger. So these are all components that we actually deliver out of the box. You don't need to do anything. We've trained the models. It will actually recognize all these various different image types on the actual images you upload and be able to do those. Now, we recognize that you might want to take it a little bit further. So you might have a custom requirement. So, there's an image there of someone, with their lungs, and maybe looking at disease and being able to analyze those wheat fields. Are those ready for harvest? Have they got any, are there problems in those wheat fields? We're picking up a whole bunch of areas where they may be concerned. They're not getting enough water. They might be having drought. They may be having various different bugs attacking them, etc. So you can actually go ahead and actually train these a bit further. Now, today I'm going to focus purely on the left-hand side. We might want to do a follow-up session where we've actually go through and actually, because we do support those custom models, so you can actually go off and actually do the pre-training on the AI Vision side and then still utilize that component as we come through.
Cool.
Right, so the steps I'm going to go through, and this really just ties back to the demo I'm going to use. So firstly, there's a once-off setup, the ones in sort of, mustardy color. So apologies for that, the yellow. So we're going to create a connection in OCI. We're going to go ahead and actually say, now, how does OCI, the AI Vision, tie back to the Analytics Cloud instance that I'm using? And again, once off. Then we'll go off and actually register a model. So you can actually go and tie the images you have to be able to then be passed to that AI Vision to be able to then abstract the information out. Now, that's, as I said, is typically a more technical type level that work that you're doing, but it's a once-off exercise we need to do in the actual connection. Obviously, registering the model, you'll see is a simple point and click. Once I've got those, I'll actually be able to upload some images into the OCI buckets. And then I'll create what's called a data flow, which actually ties all these pieces together. So basically the data flow says, I need to know where these images are existing and then be able to pass that to the AI Vision service to be able to then go off and actually run these various different components. And it will then return back to me a data set with everything it's found. And I'll show you what sort of fields that we're getting through there. So that will be done more from a sort of a business analyst type perspective person to be able to then run those various different components. The ones on the right-hand side, 5 and 6, is once we've got those, it's a simple matter of actually just drag and drop process to be able to then use these visualizations. We do use, as I said, a couple of plugins. So I'll highlight again those. They are available for download on the Oracle Analytics Cloud Library. But there's also a whole framework. And we did do a session a couple of months back where I actually ran through that in this Cloud Library with some more detail.
Cool.
Right.
I'm keen to see how far we can go with this, which I think, you're highlighting on the next slide. So go, yeah, let's see the next slide.
Yeah, so basically what we'll get from an output perspective is once this image has been passed back, we'll get obviously all the different objects that have been found in the image. So, you know, things, cars, persons, you know, in our case, we're going to find things like airplanes and boats. We also get the confidence. So how confident is the algorithm that it's actually found the right object? And then you remember those little boxes we saw on the actual image where we saw the different cars, then the bumper and the wheel. We'll actually get the various different vertices that make up those boxes. So we know exactly where on the image those particular components are available for us to be able to analyze. And then a whole bunch of other components. So we might get some error statuses, the various different components that we're passing back. But I think it's a good time to actually hop into the demo.
Let's do it.
All right.
Hey, Darren, while you're there, can you turn your, I'm just conscious about the quality about the audio that you're coming through. So do you mind turning your video off while you do your demo, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
And shall I do the same, Jason?
Should be right from your side. I want to see your reaction.
Okay.
All right, let me do a new share here. Okay.
So I need to include some expression now then, Jason.
All right.
Yes.
So just before I hop into the actual services we're going to run through, these are the 4 images that I've just downloaded. So, you know, there's obviously Maverick sitting in his plane there. We can see now, if anybody counts that, on that screen, there's actually 4 planes. He's sitting in one, there's one behind him, one on his left shoulder, right shoulder. So we'll see if it finds those. The one above is a single plane. That's fairly straightforward. Should be able to isolate those. We've obviously got the deck of a boat. Now, being able to analyze those various different components, and then, you know, the various different planes sitting on a aircraft carrier. So I'm going to actually pass these into the environment, and let's see what we get back from the actual solution set as it runs through. Okay, so let's now hop into the OCI environment. Right, so I've logged into the console. Now, most end users wouldn't have access to this. As I said, there is that initial little bit of setup, which requires me to go into here to be able to set up a couple of components. But I thought it worth just, for those who haven't seen some demos we've been doing recently around these AI services, just to highlight what those look like. So on this home page, you can see things I've been looking at recently. So I've got some object storage, and that's where I've actually uploaded these images into a bucket. I've been using the Vision AI service, and I've obviously been using Analytics Cloud, but you can see some things I've been looking at data catalog, autonomous data warehouse, and the various different components themselves as we go through. So if I navigate slightly differently, I can go to Analytics and AI, and this is actually where we go and actually look at all those analytics products on a single page. So Analytics Cloud is what I'm going to be using today, and I'm going to be using the Vision AI service primarily. Now, Vision AI is the first one that we're actually delivering integrated with Oracle Analytics Cloud. There are plans to add others. So we're working on language at the moment. We're working on forecasting. So you can actually go through and actually start utilizing these over the next period of time as those become available. Just to remind you what the Vision AI service looks like. So I'm now gone into it. And remember that the 3 main areas were around image classification. So here I've got an image. And what it's found is in that image, you can see on the right-hand side here, there's some overhead power lines, there's a road, transmission power tower, vegetation, and electricity supply. So everyday objects, it's actually found in that particular image. Hasn't highlighted where they are, but it does say that this image actually contains these objects that we're looking at. When we drill down into object detection, it gets a little bit more specific around what it's looking at. So in this image, we've got multiple different cars, buses, etc. on those lines. So you can see it's picked up, and you can see now those little boxes that are clear. So it's picked up that this car with the Oracle on the bonnet is actually a motor vehicle, and it's actually put those little vertices around it to be able to see I found it. It's found this bus on the left-hand side here. It's found obviously the taxi here. Now behind the car, there's as a human, we can kind of recognize that that's a top of a bus. There wasn't enough data for the algorithm to be able to analyze that. But this taxi behind the one in the front, there's enough in that image for us to be able to go through and actually say, yep, we can actually with some confidence say that that is another motor vehicle or car that's available for us to be able to go through and actually read that. The document AI side of things. So here's an example of a someone going off and having some lunch. So what we've been able to here is actually find the text. So you can see we've got the raw text and the key values. So in the release we have today, this raw text will be available for you to be able to analyze. What we're coming out early next year as we build out some of these capabilities is more this key value pair where we actually can tie that text back to an attribute. So it's found, for example cafe here is actually the merchant. This is the person that we actually purchased from. This is where we had lunch. It's found the address, it's found the date of it, it's found the various different line items we've had, and being able to then pick up things like subtotal and total. So, we're actually now applying some logic around some of that text to be able to then present back to you what we need and what we found in the actual information itself.
So, what's really cool about what you're highlighting here is, and I know where your demo is going. Your demo is going to go and show us how we can use these different technologies as part of an end user experience. But what Oracle's doing, it's actually making this technology available within its OCI console, and it enables you to get closer and really like a little test harness so you can understand how to use it. And then you can use it respectively, whether it's in your Python program, your Node.js, or Apex or Oracle Analytics. So we've got this nice little on-ramp to these different technologies like document AI, object detection, and image classification. It's very cool.
Absolutely. Yep. Right. So the last thing to show here before we drop into the front end, which is really where we want to be able to go through, what I've done is I've created a bucket. Okay, it's just my initials in the bucket. It's public. You sort of may have seen there. I've got this marked as public. And in here, I've actually created a couple of folders, and I've got two sets of folders. One with my 4 top gun images there, and the other one I'm actually going to show sort of a real world example around analyzing data in a car park. Okay, so let's hop across to Analytics Cloud. Just make sure I'm still logged in here. All right. So as a once-off effort, what I need to do is actually go ahead and create this connection to the actual OCI services themselves. So if I go and create a connection, you can see here we've been using connections typically to Oracle applications, autonomous databases, standard databases, some of our applications, etc. There's a new one now available since July release, which is this OCI resources. So in here, I need to give it a name, description, and then I need to tie it back to the actual tenancy I'm using and the user, and I'll have an API key that actually ties the two together. Now, I've actually done that, so I'm not going to go through the steps and actually show you how those, but it's a fairly simple. Now, again, to highlight, this is once off per OCI, per OAC tenancy. So you only have to do this once in your Oracle Analytics Cloud, and then it's available to be able to then connect to AI Vision services itself.
Got it.
The other one I have to do is now I need to actually tie those images back to a model. So if I go again up to the top here, what I can do is I can go and register a model or function. Now you can see 3 different types there. So we've had for a fairly long time in Oracle Analytics Cloud the ability to be able to leverage any data mining models that are sitting in the Oracle database, traditional database, ADW. So if you've created a machine learning model in there, you were able to actually register that with Oracle Analytics Cloud and make use of it. And we'd pass the data down, do all the parsing in the database, and then make those results back to you. In about January to March timeframe, we released the ability for Oracle Analytics Cloud to leverage the functions as a service capability that's in OCI. So what this allows you to do is you can write things like Python scripts, JavaScripts, and be able to then leverage those functions in the actual. Now we had that in the on-prem world for a while now, but because of security constraints, we actually kind of blocked it for a little bit in Oracle Analytics Cloud. But now that we have these new functions as a service that are already tightly secured down, we've now been able to leverage some of that capability there and tie the two together. The new one is the OCI Vision models. So I can go in here, and what I need to do is just create and link to that connection that I created. And it'll go through now, if you remember, it'll actually go through and actually show you, I've got now those 3 different components. So I can do a pre-trained image classification. I can do text in that image, or I can do object detection. And this is a custom model that exists in my environment. So there's the, so what we're going to do here is I'll actually analyze those 4 Top Gun images. So I'm going to use the object detection. And then all I need to do is go and say, all right, I'm going to give it a name. So Top Gun. And all I have to do is actually pass it that particular storage bucket folder. So if you remember when I went into my bucket, I drilled down and I had a folder called Top Gun where I had my 4 images. So any folder that's in that public or in your tenancy public buckets are available for us to be able to pass. So I can just say Top Gun here, and it'll actually go off and actually I can then go and register that particular component. I've done that already, so I'm not going to cancel on here. So from a setup perspective, that's all we have to do. Okay, then we need to do that data flow to be able to tie these all together. So I'm going to go ahead and actually create a data flow here. So data flow, think about as a sort of a lightweight data wrangling ETL tool within Oracle Analytics Cloud. So end user driven capability to be able to manipulate data to be able to then analyze further. So in my case, I'm going to go and say I'm interested in my Top Gun data, and I've got the source mapping file, which basically tells the environment where those existing images exist in my bucket. So I can actually go ahead and actually analyze those. So that's my input. And I'm now in the actual data flow component. You can see here, I can do a whole bunch of things. You know, if this is a database or Excel spreadsheets. In this case, I'm really interested in some of the capability that we have from a machine learning perspective. So down across the bottom here, for a while in Analytics Cloud, we've had these first few here. So if I wanted to do a training to predict maybe our profit, I'd use a training numeric. If I want to go through and say, maybe I want to predict my spend classification. So I've got all these different categories and I might have a whole bunch of miscellaneous spend and wouldn't be able to classify it. I could use a train multiple classification because there's multiple values in those. If I wanted to go and predict potentially people who are leaving the organization, so things like attrition, that's a yes or no. So it's binary, 1 or 2 values. I'd train a binary classification. But we have this new one here, which I can go ahead and say, I actually want to apply as one of these new AI models. So there's the one you just saw me register. So I went ahead and created one called Top Gun, and I'm going to utilize that particular model. And if you remember the slide actually showed you, so it's going to bring back things like the object name, the confidence around that particular component, each of those little boxes. So every time it finds, in my case, hopefully an airplane or a boat or a person, it'll actually give you the vertices or in terms of where those exist and various different components. Now, I can make a couple of changes here, but really key things I need to select is what is my input column. So in this case, it's actually in my file that I mapped to. So that was that source file there. It's the file location. So where do these files exist in my bucket? And because I'm pointing to an individual file, I'm actually going to be pointing to images. I'm not pointing to a bucket at the top level. So I'm going to be pointing to images here. So that's as simple as being able to do it. And then the last thing I need to do is actually, I want to actually, once this is passed those images to the AI Vision service, done its processing, it's going to return a whole bunch of data to me. I actually want to save that data. So I can go ahead and actually now give it a name. And these are the various different fields that will actually be saved in that data set. Now, I've done that, I've executed, I've run that. So in the interest of time, let's go back and see what that would actually result back in. So I'm not going to save that. So if I now go to all my different data sets, okay, what I've got here is this AI Vision Top Gun, because that's what I called when I save the data. And if I go and click on that, it'll actually bring that particular component up for me. And remember those fields that we mapped? Yeah, there's all those various different fields. Just wanted to highlight quickly here, we did show a little while back, one of the new features is this new auto insights. In the July release, one change is this is now on automatically. You can turn it off globally or by individual workbook if you wanted to. But in this case, it's actually gone through and taken straight away and actually run those insights on there. So you can see it's actually picked up straight away. I've got 8 airplanes, I've got 3 boats, and I've got 1 person in those 4 images that it's actually gone ahead and found.
Cool.
Or I could just drag and drop and say, yeah, bring that onto an environment and you can actually start seeing that. Now, to again save time, what I'm going to do is I've actually pre-created a visualization on top of this data. So if I go back to home, I can go and see, right, you can see the using the capability from a homepage perspective. This is things I've been working on recently. So here's that Top Gun image recognition. And you can see there, we've gone through and actually analyzed in this particular case, what it's found in the actual image itself. So it's picked up the person and it's picked up, in this case, 3 airplanes. All right, so we've got a total there, 3 coming through. It's given us the airplane, the confidence around those, and actually being able to analyze those. If we go and drill down into maybe the aircraft carrier, so you can see which ones it's found. That's certainly, if you look at those 2 there, don't really look like an airplane. So the algorithm hasn't found those. You can see the images that it's gone through and actually analyzed them and had a look at. So just a bit of fun with some data, something topical. But probably now is a good segue is, how would you use this in real life? So the other example I had was around this car park analysis. So what we've done here is we've taken, as I open this up, you can see there around about, well, just over 400 images of a parking lot. And you can see those a little bit tiny there maybe, but there's one blown up. So we're taking images on a regular basis at different times of the day across multiple weeks to be able to start analyzing utilization within our car park. What sort of vehicles are parking there, and when are peak periods, and being able to then actually use these images to be able to get some sort of, maybe we want to charge an extra tariff during the peak periods. Maybe we hike the fees by 10% because we know it's going to be highly utilized at the time. Whereas at 7 a.m. in the morning, maybe we want to give them a 50% discount, try and attract more people coming into the car park. So analysis around that information as we go through. So you can see here the peak periods are really around sort of 10, 11, 12 during the sort of late to mid-morning. All right, we're going through, we can see in the tag cloud, certainly the largest type of vehicle that parks in our parking lot is a car. It's picked up things like vans and trees and street lights, etc. A couple of strange ones: airplane, boat, train. So there are some outliers that do occur in some of these images that might look slightly strange in the actual image. So the algorithm doesn't get them 100% right all the time. If I go just here quickly onto edit mode, I can use some of the capabilities in Analytics Cloud. So, maybe I'm interested in actually drilling down into where is this traffic light, and I'll actually then drill down into the actual, if I turn on the ability to be able to use that as filter, traffic light, it will then drill down into the various different components and actually analyze those that we're looking at. So, it'll go through, there we go, and you can see there it's actually found, so all the images at the top here, it's actually gone through and actually found that particular street light on that particular image, and each of these images at the top here have obviously got a street light in them as well, so being able to highlight those. So just a bit of fun with some data around Top Gun, and then going back into hopefully what might be a real world example of how you might use this in anger to be able to actually solve day-to-day business problems.
That's a great demo, Darren. What I, like seeing this capability of how we've taken that raw vision algorithm and then being able to work out how to take advantage of it as a algorithm that's sitting here and sitting inside Oracle Analytics is a really good example of the power of OCI. So, the idea of data, the idea of these different types of technologies, and then the Oracle development teams are putting the time and effort in to work out how to get that both horizontal and vertical engineering, so that's not left to us as developers in the field in organizations. We're able to take advantage of these fast-moving technologies so we can embrace them across the different places, whether it's something like Apex or analytics, and getting the bang for buck as quickly as possible. This is a really good demo. Thank you, Darren. Anything else, Darren, before we close off the recording?
It's probably a good segue to move into questions.
Thank you.